Today, we are digging into a really powerful idea from Friedrich Nietzsche about a certain type of person he called explosive people. It's a surprisingly biological take on why some folks just blow up. And honestly, it might just flip everything you think you know about anger right on its head. You know the type, right? Heck, maybe sometimes we're the type. Someone seems perfectly calm, and then, boom, the smallest, most insignificant thing sets off this massive eruption. Now, we usually just write that off as a lack of self-control or maybe some kind of moral weakness. But Nietzsche, well, he had a completely different answer. Okay, so let's really get into Nietzsche's core metaphor here, because it's a game changer. He says we need to stop thinking of these people as just angry. Instead, picture them as containers of immense, built-up energy, literally like a barrel of gunpowder. He says they have this deep, primitive, he calls it atavistic, pressure just building and building inside. So the outburst itself, that's not the main event. It's just the necessary, inevitable release of all that tension. So if that's what's actually happening on the inside, how do we, as a society, tend to see it from the outside? Let's be real for a second. It's usually not with a whole lot of understanding. From the outside looking in, our reaction is pretty straightforward. We slap a label on it. We call the action and the person wicked, dangerous, impulsive. We see them as a threat to everyone's safety. We frame it as a clear failure of character, a moral slip-up that messes with the calm, predictable world we like to live in. And this really nails the common view. Nietzsche uses that famous term, the herd, to describe mainstream society, which, really prizes safety and predictability over everything else. So from that point of view, an explosive person isn't just annoying, they're a direct threat to the whole system. And so they're met with fear, with disgust. But, and this is the key, Nietzsche says this judgment completely, totally misses the real story. And this is where we get to Nietzsche's radical reframing of the whole thing. He's asking us to step outside of that social judgment, to look beyond our simple ideas of good and evil, and see this as a matter of pure, simple physiology. This right here, this is the absolute heart of his argument. Society looks at an outburst and sees a moral choice. They think, you chose to get that angry. But Nietzsche looks at the same event and sees a physiological need. The body simply had to release that pressure. It's a huge shift, taking it out of the world of ethics and putting it squarely into the world of biology. So here's the bottom line. For the explosive person, that outburst is actually an act of self-preservation. It has nothing to do with malice or a desire to hurt people. It's about a deep, internal, totally non-negotiable need to discharge all that stored-up energy just to keep their own system from breaking down. What's so amazing here is that Nietzsche shows us it's like a mechanical process. This isn't just random. First, the internal pressure builds up over time. Then, some little thing happens. And this is critical. It's just the spark, not the actual cause. That spark ignites the pressure, and you get the necessary eruption. And the whole point of this entire cycle? It's to avoid what Nietzsche called internal stagnation, which is basically a kind of spiritual collapse that would be devastating for the person. This quote just drives the point home, doesn't it? Think of it like a volcano. A volcanic eruption isn't evil, it's a geological necessity, right? It has to release that pressure building up inside the earth. Well, for Nietzsche, the explosive person is basically a human volcano. That eruption isn't a failure. It's a sign that their internal system is working correctly to keep itself from collapsing. Okay, so you might be wondering, if the outburst is just a biological release, then where do all the excuses and justifications come from? I mean, they always have a reason, right? Well, this is where Nietzsche dives into the really fascinating psychology of how we explain ourselves to ourselves. As soon as that purely physical event is over, the mind kicks into high gear. And its job, believe it or not, isn't to find the real cause, that biological pressure. No, its job is to invent a story, a rationalization that makes the person look like they were justified, noble, and totally in control. It's a great cover-up. Right, so the intellect basically reverse engineers a reason. It sees the explosion and then frantically scrambles to find a noble-sounding cause to attach to it. This is what Nietzsche calls the theatrical part. We become actors on the stage of our own minds, writing a script to explain a raw, unscripted biological impulse. And here are some of the most popular masks, the most common scripts we use. We tell ourselves we blew up because we were defending a holy cause, or because our dignity was attacked. We find an enemy and we blame them. But according to Nietzsche, these are all just convenient props. The person was going to explode anyway. They were just, as he puts it, greedy for any pretext that would let them do it without losing face. And this all leads to a huge concept for Nietzsche, the theater of the soul. See, our minds create these elaborate plays not for other people, but for ourselves. It's all to satisfy our own vanity, our deep, desperate need to believe that we're rational beings acting for noble reasons, and not, just creatures driven by raw biological forces. So, what does this all mean? If this is our nature, are we just doomed to be slaves to our own internal pressure cooker? No way! Not at all. And this is where Nietzsche lays out the great challenge, especially for the kind of person he calls the free spirit. You've probably heard Nietzsche's famous declaration of the death of God. What he meant was the collapse of a universal, divine authority that gives meaning to everything. And in a world like that, there's no divine judge to give our actions meaning or to forgive us for our outbursts. And this is the point. When that external authority is gone, all that's left is you and your own raw power. The responsibility for what you do with that explosive internal energy, well, it falls completely and totally on your shoulders. You have to become the architect of your own eruptions. But for Nietzsche, this isn't some terrible burden. It's a massive opportunity. The truly noble challenge isn't to suppress this energy. Remember, that just leads to that fatal stagnation. No, the real challenge is to master it, to learn how to channel it, and to transform it into something more. And this lays out the two paths so clearly. The common path, the easy path, is just pure reaction. You let the pressure build, you look for a target, and you unleash a destructive eruption. But the path of the free spirit, that's different. That's about consciously taking that exact same energy, that will to power, and directing it into a creative fire. This is the ultimate goal, to achieve what Nietzsche calls a magnanimous self-control, which is kind of a generous, big-hearted mastery over your own nature. The point isn't to put the fire out, it's to own the fire. It's to make that incredible energy serve the goals you choose for yourself, instead of just letting it burn down whatever happens to be nearby. In the end, this whole analysis is really a call for a kind of radical honesty. Nietzsche is pushing us to conduct an audit of ourselves, to look under the hood of the heroic or wicked stories we tell, and to see the raw biological drives that are really pulling the strings. And that really leaves us with a final and pretty personal question to think about. If we recognize that we all have this internal pressure, this will to power in one form or another, how do you channel yours? Is it a destructive eruption just looking for a target? Or is it a creative fire that you are consciously and deliberately directing? The choice, Nietzsche would argue, is entirely your own.